All right, so we'll walk through the steps and show you what your screen should look like as you complete the 3.3 solution. In the resources folder, you'll see the same images and the same versions. I've already opened up my virtual machine, and I'm actually ready to start with this. In fact, I've taken the first step. Now, one thing that's mentioned, and it shows in the resources folder, is that before you begin the task, make sure that your file and print sharing echo request rules are disabled in the server firewall. So that's one thing you want to make sure we have a consistent start with the solution. Hello, James, can you hear?
Yes, I can.
And can you see the screen?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so once that step is done, you're going to want to attempt to ping it with your host. So on my laptop, I'll try to ping it. I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a moment, rather than performing the actual tasks. But you'll capture the screen so that it shows, even from your host, you can't ping your virtual machine. And then you'll create a virtual machine snapshot and call it bridged NIC before the firewall rule. Okay. So here is basically what we've walked through. This command prompt is from my host machine, and I'm trying to ping my server. And you'll notice that my request times out. And I'm in bridged mode. And what I need to do is create a snapshot called bridged NIC before the firewall rule. Now it's helpful to include additional details. So in the description, I typed, the server VM has no echo request inbound rules enabled. The NIC is in bridged mode and uses a fixed IP address, right? So at this point, I've selected the options for my server and chosen the snapshot option. And this is where I am here. When I click the take button, this window appears. Now it's going to ask if I want to take a snapshot. Each time I click the take option, it's going to have a nasty habit of prompting to see if I want to take an additional snapshot before I go ahead and work with this. And I always uncheck that box. So that's something I thought I'd just mention here. Once you've done that, it'll show bridged NIC before firewall rule. And at that point, you can go back in and perform step number 2. Any questions about the first task?
No, not at all.
Right, so this shows the command prompt window from the host. It's ineffective. This shows what we're doing with the snapshot. All right. Second task, we want you to enable the firewall rule on your virtual machine to allow echo. Now, if that was already enabled in the first place before you started the solution, we just turned it off, it's going to seem like we're kind of going back and forth here. But the goal here is to change the state of the virtual machine so that it behaves differently, and then take another snapshot, right? So we want you to go back into the firewall on the virtual machine and then allow the echo rules, and then repeat the same ping and capture a working result, and then create a new virtual machine snapshot called bridged NIC after the firewall rule. So essentially, once you get in here and you go into the firewall rule, advanced settings, inbound rules, and you turn these 3 echo request rules green or enable, and then go back to your host machine, when you open up the command prompt and ping, what you should see now is a working result. Can everybody see the screen?
Yep.
So this is the same command prompt from my laptop, and I'm trying to ping my server now, and it works. So I'm going to take another snapshot, and this one's going to be called bridged NIC after the firewall rule. And the description reads, this snapshot was taken after inbound echo request firewall rules were enabled for the server with the NIC in bridged mode. And this is the combination of details, the same combination of details that you want to submit for task 2. So it's showing a new snapshot, and it's showing that the change worked. Any questions? The third task. So we're going to modify the settings for the virtual machine with the network interface and select NAT from the top of the pull-down list. And then we're going to display the current network adapter configuration showing a new IP address. Then we'll repeat the ping and capture a screen image showing the failed result. So we'll change a network setting on the server again. It's going to throw everything out of kilter. And what we'll do is show what the effect is, but we'll take a new screenshot. And we want to make sure that the different network address shows on the server, on the virtual machine. And we'll create a final screenshot that says NAT NIC after firewall rule. So even though the firewall rule is in there, when you change the configuration of the physical or the network interface from bridge to NAT, you've basically reconfigured it so that it's working off of a 10 address. And even though the firewall enables pings to occur, the effect is when you change from bridge to NAT, you're creating an entirely new network beginning with that virtual machine, and it's on a different address range. So it's not even in the same network, which is why the ping doesn't work. And we just want to demonstrate what would happen if a simple change were to screw everything up. And then if we're troubleshooting, it's good to take snapshots frequently, because then you can kind of roll forward and roll back to see what went wrong. So while this is in a barfed up state, we want to go ahead and take a screenshot. I mean, not just a screenshot, but then a snapshot, a point in time capture of the virtual machine state, and then preserve that. So we have a third snapshot. This is what it'll look like. You'll see behind here, as soon as I change the settings, if I go back into this option list and choose details, I'm able to see the network interface, and I can change it from bridge to NAT. And then when I go back into here, so I'm ready to take a screenshot. That's why you don't see that detail right here. But notice what happened. Notice what happened to the IP address. So again, from the laptop, I'm sitting on the laptop trying to ping 10.0.2.15, which is the IP address here, and it fails. Now, the firewall rules are not the problem. So I'm going to go ahead and grab I started to grab a new snapshot here, and this is what the description reads. It says the server NIC settings were changed to NAT. Then the IP configuration was modified to allow automatic IP assignment. The ping attempt from host to virtual machine fails. That's because you're actually working through a gateway and the network address translation, and pings don't travel through that kind of configuration or network change. So this is this shows all the elements that are expected for the third task after you're done. So once you change to NAT, the IP address changes, the laptop tries to ping, doesn't work, and you should have a new snapshot that shows that. Any questions about what's expected for your task 3 submission? So task 4 is actually where the magic happens. You're going to shut down your virtual machine, and while you're powered off, you'll select the option to view the VM snapshots, and then you'll restore that second listing, which is actually the first real snapshot that you took. And it'll be the one that says bridged NIC after the firewall rule. So that's all you're going to do is restore the second snapshot. When you run the virtual machine, you want to show the settings to view the network configuration and try to ping your virtual machine from your laptop. And then you're going to capture a view to show that the previous snapshot reversed the last series of changes. So this is what will happen. You're going to go ahead and you'll restore. So this is task 4, or step 4 has 2 parts. You'll go ahead and restore after it's shut down. You'll restore to the bridged NIC after the firewall rule snapshot. And you're going to leave this unchecked. It'll be checked by default, but you don't want that. You want to uncheck it and click restore. So that's the first piece of this. And then after you're done, magically, the network interface changes back to the original network configuration, the static address. And from your laptop, you can ping it because the firewall rule is still in effect. So that's the detail you need to submit for task 4. Any questions? All right, so the very last thing you're going to do is repeat the same process in step 4. But instead of restoring to the second snapshot, you want to restore to the very first snapshot. View the network settings, ping the results, and capture a view of how your system changed. So if you're careful about how and when you take your snapshots, you can roll forward or roll back through different system environments before and after changes. This is incredibly helpful as a method when you're troubleshooting why things are working, why they aren't working, because it's not uncommon for things to work just fine today, and then an update hits, and then tomorrow it's not working at all. And if you've taken a snapshot, you can roll back to the previous snapshot and figure out what's going on. So on the system, that's what the end result looks like. Except for the 5th step, you'll see if I go all the way back to before the firewall rule, what do you predict will happen? Will I be able to ping
well, no.
Yeah, you won't. You're restoring it all the way back to the beginning when the firewall rules were disabled, right? And that's literally what you'll see when you start the machine up. If you took the snapshot with these windows open, you'll literally see when it comes back up the same screens, the same state. So